Welcome into another edition of The Day After. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Buck Sanders and Jason Staples. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Buck, we were kind of talking on off air before we got in here, and we said if there's one thing we know about doing day after podcasts after bad defensive performances. Got a little rusty up to the Virginia game, but now we're in mid-season form here. Your overall thoughts on what we just watched just 12 short hours ago?
Yeah. If you don't think that we know how to talk about bad defense, you just have not been a UNC person very, very long. Um, and that was bad defense. And I'm going to go here just right off the top that there were a lot of things that um, could and should get cleaned up from that game, offensively and defensively. Well, they weren't perfect on offense at all. And in addition to that, uh, I'm not one that generally likes to beat up on the zebras any, and I'm not really going to beat up on them much now. But there was a couple of momentum-killing penalties that North Carolina got flagged for that didn't look like any different from some of the plays that Georgia Tech did not get flagged for. I'll put it that way. But I'll go on to say that even if they got all of that corrected, they still would have lost to Georgia Tech because the defense was that bad.
Indeed,
It
it
was that
was.
it was that bad. And let me give you my synopsis of how bad it was. I hope I've got this in a handy little blurb here. In the second quarter, Georgia Tech was 14 of 14 in passing for 272 yards, three touchdowns, and averaged 19.4 yards per attempt. In the fourth quarter, they ran it for 22 times, 265 yards, and averaged 11.2 yards per attempt rushing. In those two quarters, they scored the entirety of their 46 points, rolled up 537 yards of offense, and converted 6 out of 7 third down attempts, and they ran 50 of their 78 offensive plays of the night. Two quarters, they did enough to beat North Carolina for the entire game. So that's how bad the defense was, and Georgia Tech could do whatever they wanted. North Carolina wasn't getting any pressure on. Of course, Georgia Tech is good at avoiding pressure. They've only given up 7 sacks all year. They're now, I think, eighth in the nation in terms of sacks allowed. Still, not a single quarterback pressure on the night, or quarterback hurry, which they record. I don't know what the PFF numbers are for pressures,
Yeah, they had at
but
least one because Evans had the one where he flushed the quarterback and it turned into a no gain.
but one.
Yeah, one.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what those PFF numbers are, but uh, Georgia Tech was just free to operate however they wanted. The defensive line could not get any pressure. They didn't have a plan to get pressure on King from any other direction. It didn't seem to me. Um, so as bad as the defense was, none of those other things we talked about, the penalties and whatnot, would have made any difference. North Carolina still loses this game.
Yeah. But pull the mic a little bit closer. When we mic checked, you had it up there. But Jason, I'm gonna get you in here. Yeah, there were some penalties and all that, but the bottom line is that North Carolina's defense is a travesty. I mean, they showed signs of life in games 1 through 6. There was some cracks by App State, and Buck mentioned Virginia set the blueprint. I think App State set the blueprint even before that. I mean, dudes were running free, and they talk about when they played great defense in the third quarter. Georgia Tech had the ball for a minute, a little over a minute in the third quarter. I mean, it's great when you play defense for a minute. That fourth quarter, App State has company. You know, Mac was asked about it. I think Adam asked and AJ asked in post game, but unbelievable. And I liked your insight on our side chats about what was going on there. But just overall, right now, before we detail it, any words for what we saw last night?
Well, first of all, I do want to be fair, as Buck was. I do think that the phantom hold on Diego Pounds did change the course of the game. Because that was a game. What was a 38-yard gain? They were in position to go up 3 scores, and then that ends that drive, and then Georgia Tech scores to cut it to 1 score. That is a play that has significant impact on the overall game, because you do wonder, okay, well, what happens if they do go up 3 scores, and you go up 3, it's a big difference, etc. But like Buck, my end conclusion is, well, then they just scored another touchdown. They'd have found another way. Because in the fourth quarter, the only reason they didn't score on that last drive is because they could kneel. I mean, 3rd and 3, opportunity to get a stop for the defense, and the back only went down because they didn't need to score. He could have scored right there. So, yeah, this was. I think in a lot of ways, this defensive performance was worse than what we saw at App State last year. Which
interesting,
and especially at this stage of the year, because with App State last year, I mean, it was just there were busts, right? There were a variety of busts where guys just weren't in the right spot. What was it, the second game under a new coordinator, or was it the third?
App State was second.
Yeah, it was the second game. So second game under a new coordinator, you had some busts, you had some, missed assignments here and all that. I didn't see a ton of missed assignments out there. I just saw a defense just getting absolutely dominated. And in both phases. So they got beat in the passing game in the second quarter, like Buck said. And then in the fourth quarter, they got just run over. So this was not a matter of, like, against App State, it was, a few big plays that were partly the result of some missed assignments, just kind of apocalyptic kind of thing that happened. In this one, it was one of those things where you knew, like, this defense, they kept saying in the broadcast, oh, they are gassed, they are tired. Why? They
held the ball longer than Tech did.
Yeah.
I mean, time of possession.
Yeah, you played 5 plays in the third quarter. You shouldn't be tired. The reason they were tired is because Georgia Tech was
wearing their ass out.
Yeah. You said it. Yeah, they were getting worn out up front, and they looked tired because they were just getting destroyed out at the point of attack. And yeah, that gets tiring, 6th, 7th, 8th play of a drive when you're, getting driven back. Yeah, you look tired. But this was, I think, in a lot of ways worse. And when this is happening at this stage of a defensive staff being in place, at this stage of having the recruits that you've actually recruited over the last few years on campus, this is the kind of performance, especially paired with last week. This is not a one-off. When you get this sort of thing, this is the sort of thing that requires, that does not suggest that you might need to. It's the sort of thing that requires that you need to make some changes.
Like, almost immediately. I remember being here doing this show after, 70 that ECU put up in Greenville. And I said, I think some people need to be left down there. And,
this was one of those.
And Uber home. Well, they didn't have Uber back then. I think I might have said Greyhound bus. And
you
Jason,
did.
you Buck, let's sort of put it in perspective.
Tarmac firing type situation.
Yeah, I mean, for this team to go from top 10 2 weeks ago, we did a podcast 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about playoffs. We were talking about high
Playoffs?
rankings. We were talking about high rankings, and then Virginia happens. And quite frankly, I thought, and Buck, I want your thoughts here. I thought that after the Virginia game, it would set them up better to play Georgia Tech, simply because this old team, it clicks. You can't be soft. You can't do this, and then they just double down on it.
And that was, you remember, that was the concern that both Greg and I brought up in the chat. And we both brought it up in the Game Plan podcast, and we had a lot more to say after we finished recording. Could have put some of that on air, but it was probably a little bit too spicy for air at the time about what our potential concerns were, and every one of them came out in this game. And yeah, it was just the same old soft Carolina, same old soft Tar Heels.
Yeah. At this point in the season, Buck, perspective, we were talking numbers, like number of plays and whatnot for Georgia Tech. We can talk about the 260 plus in the fourth quarter, but I think the number of plays that Georgia Tech was able to run, given what they've been doing, is pretty startling.
It is. We're talking off air, and the 3 games prior to last night, they averaged running 60.7 plays per game. Some of that is just pure intentional. You know, they just take their time because their defense is not very good. Their offense is pretty good. And so as we saw last night, their defense has got some issues. So they take their time running that ball, playing keep away, and thinking they have the more explosive offense. They can get more out of their offense than you can get out of yours. That's sort of their entire philosophy. But last night, instead of running 60 plays, they ran 78. Again, intentional. And that was a blueprint provided by the Virginia game. Virginia had a bye week, came in and said, hey, here's what we'll do. We'll run as fast as we possibly can without tripping over our own feet, and we'll force North Carolina's defense to adjust quickly, play to play. And that's something that both Virginia and now Georgia Tech has proven that North Carolina can't do. If you don't give that defense time to get set, they're not going to play well. They may not play well anyway, but the issue is going to be they're not going to get set. They're going to have 12 men on the field. They didn't last night. I don't think they got a penalty for that. But you could see that there was confusion. There was not certainty. They weren't comfortable what they were doing, what their assignment was. They just did not look at all comfortable when they didn't have time to get set. So I think that's the big reason that they had the most trouble with Georgia Tech, is because Virginia showed them how to do it. And that's just go fast. Don't give North Carolina time to figure out what they're doing.
Thing is, I'm gonna build on that for a second. Thing is, it's not just about not being set. It's not just about not knowing what you're doing. The thing that I notice is as soon as teams go tempo, the defensive tackles in particular, they lose their burst and their edge within about 2 or 3 plays of the drive. So, and you know, you'll have people talk about this with Brian Hess as the strength and conditioning coach. That's not a strength and conditioning coach issue. That's an in-season conditioning issue. And what that tells me is that the practice tempo is too slow in individual drills, in, you know, what they're expecting these guys to do in terms of maintaining the overall level of conditioning play to play on explosiveness and that sort of thing that you have to maintain in practice. This is in order to have a, you know, it used to be that, you know, teams would run gassers after every practice. And, you know, I've run more gassers in my life than you know, I care to think about, but there's a better way to do it. And the best teams all do it this way. The idea is we condition in practice. You hear that from a lot of good coaches now, where the idea is the tempo of the practice is so high that your defensive tackles, your offensive line, those guys, they're going at it so hard with so much effort, 3 and 4 plays at a time, and with high tempo and all of that, in the demands of the sorts of things that they're going to be asked to do during the game, that when they get into the game, they can actually maintain that level of intensity play to play. And I just don't see a whole lot. And this is really, I think, the root issue here. If we're talking about this, I don't see and we talked about this for how long with North Carolina? I don't see the base level intensity, play after play, and it starts with the team on the defensive line, and especially at defensive tackle. I don't see that level of how did I put it a couple of years ago? When you watch Georgia, you watch a team that doesn't want to beat you, right? They want to humiliate you, first of all, but they are absolutely play in, play out, selling out to win that play. And you see those defensive linemen in general just working that way. I don't see, and this is not a defensive line coach issue, this is a program issue in terms of the overall level of intensity that you have to demand from those guys up front. And Tommy, I remember during preseason, you pointed at Travis Shaw, who had, pulled himself out a couple times and gone down to a knee, and you're like, man, just so soft. Because, he just was not, he didn't have the intensity level to sustain like 2 or 3 plays in a row, even in the drills that they were doing. And those were not real high intensity drills, as you recall. And we both kind of circled that moment as a remember this later in the year if there's problems on the interior. But that's what we're seeing. Miles Murphy, I could probably pull 7 different plays where he's 4 yards downfield, just sort of stood up, kind of lazily stood up, got pushed back into the linebackers as the back is flying upfield through that gap. That's supposed to be your difference maker, your bell cow defensive tackle. But the lack of urgency and intensity from him, and especially in the fourth quarter when the game was on, when you expect him to be able to split a double team, you expect your defensive tackle to be able to make a play. You didn't get one from him. You didn't get one from Tomon Fox. You didn't get one from any of those defensive tackles that were in there. They just went backwards, and they looked tired because you get three plays into any drive, and they are tired. And yeah, that to me is a system, a program issue, much more than it is a single coach issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a couple of those Georgia Tech plays, they just washed the defensive middle out of the way. And what's interesting to me, and I don't feel like we need to talk about the offense much at all.
They averaged 8 yards a play.
Yeah, you put up that. You cannot say the offense lost this game. Were there plays that they should have made? Certainly. But what they did was plenty. But one thing I will talk about, they ran the ball up the middle against Georgia Tech all day. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they had a large majority of their rushing up the middle. And then for whatever reason.
Yeah, TV broadcast had up a graphic, and at the time they had like maybe 40 yards or so on either side of the middle, on the left or the right, and they had like 160 up the middle.
Yeah. And what did they do on a critical third down late in the game? Omarion Hampton is running east and west, and they lose yardage or no gain and end up having to punt, and it gets Georgia Tech back in it. That's my only beef with the offense.
Let me jump in here, Tommy.
Go ahead.
Let me jump in a second. I would have to go back and look at that play. I think I've looked at it twice. And what I saw was Hampton was going to go to the middle of the Georgia Tech line. There were 2 Georgia Tech players coming right at him running free, unblocked. And so he had no choice but to take it outside or get a tackle for loss in the backfield. That's how I saw it. And Jason, sounds like you saw the same thing.
Well, good. I've been corrected, so I have no beefs with the offense.
That was an outside zone play that was designed to cut back the same way that they'd cut back early in the game. The difference was that early in the game, Georgia Tech was getting washed on that play, and Hampton was able to just take that and, cut back exactly as you're supposed to. You remember, the outside zone play is the Terrell Davis play from the late 90s Broncos.
Who was that guy? Alex somebody that was the great offensive lineman? Gibbs.
Yeah. It's the traditional Alex Gibbs play where offensive line gets the line of scrimmage moving a little bit, and then the goal of this run, if you block it right, is you start out aimed towards the tackle of the play side, and then as soon as a seam opens up, you hit that, you stick that foot in the ground and get downhill quick, cut back, and they did that well in the first half. And here's the thing, and I know. Okay, so this is a podcast where there's a lot of North Carolina fans in the chat, so that we're going to talk about something that I know is unusual, and you may not think it's legal, but Georgia Tech adjusted to getting beat up front there in some of those things, and ultimately was able to start getting penetration and starting to win on the defensive line as the game went on. And so Carolina tried to adjust back offensively. But here's the thing. Where I was going to go with this too is second half. All right. So I'm just going to go to third quarter and beyond runs. Okay. Hampton up the middle 6, Hampton up the middle 5, Hampton to the right for 5, Hampton up the middle for 7. And now's where things start to change after the next couple. Hampton up the middle for 3. Then Hampton up the middle for 10. Hampton up the middle for 5. Now to the left for 9, up the middle for 2, up the middle for 2, to the right for no gain, up the middle for 3 in the fourth quarter, up the middle for nothing, and then rush to the right, which is, again, it's just an outside zone play that's supposed to cut back. The issue is you had 2 front side blockers there that got beat across their face. And that started happening. You notice how as that third and fourth quarter started going from rush for 6, rush for 7, rush for 8, to rush for 2, rush for 3, rush for no gain. And Chip Lindsey at that point started making some adjustments a little bit to what they were doing offensively. And I think it was the right decision to make in terms of what they did. And I have no issue with what the offense did in this game in that respect. They averaged 8 yards a play and scored 42 points and lost the game to a team that had not scored over 30 points against Power 5 competition this year, except in their opening Power 5 game against Vandy. Right? The most that Georgia Tech had scored all season coming into this game against a Power 5 team was 38 points against Vandy. They did not score over 30 points against anybody else. Okay? You score 42 points, average 8 yards a play against that team, you should win that game. That is not on the offense. And the thing is, the offense was also in position to take the lead again, but a great hit and it was a fully legal hit. I've seen some people questioning that. It was a completely legal hit on Tez Walker, which, prayers up for the young man. I hope he's doing fine. That looked like the kind of hit where, you could break a rib for sure, a couple, but where that is on the left side, my thought first goes to spleen. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope he's doing fine. But it was a hard enough hit. You could get a collapsed lung from that sort of hit. I mean, there's a variety of different things that can happen there. And that if he doesn't take that shot, Carolina almost certainly scores and goes ahead. And then we're, talking a little bit differently about Georgia Tech managing to drive the field in a minute and a half without passing the football on that final drive to go ahead and win the game, 53 to 49, right? That's what we'd be talking about instead of the current situation, because they'd have just run the football for 14, 15, 18, 60 yards of play on that last drive. I'm just, you remember this after we stopped broadcasting in the game plan, Tommy, how Greg and I were talking about this, our frustration of hearing that, well, all that time that they, the time of possession disadvantage against Virginia, and how, the real issue is they need to run the football on offense so that the defense is protected and all of this other stuff. And you remember how we were both frustrated talking about that off air, because both of us had the same reaction, which is the offense doesn't stop anybody. This is not basketball, right?
Yep.
This is not basketball where possessing the ball means that like you're essentially playing defense with your offense, especially when you've got a good offense. You don't you don't play Virginia in basketball and say, wow, they're really, possessing the ball a lot on their side of the ball. The best answer would be to slow the game down so that they can't possess the ball as long. So you want to play a game in the 30s against Virginia in basketball? That's a terrible idea. They're going to win that every time. You have an offense and the ability to get out and run. You need to try to take control of the game and make it into a track meet so that they can't comfortably just possess the ball and do what they want to do. You want to win that style matchup. And blaming the offense for the defense not being able to get off the field was the issue. And the fact of the matter is, if you're facing a bunch of plays on defense and you're starting to get tired and you're having issues with, time of possession, which time of possession is a after effect, not a primary effect. You don't try to win time of possession. The issue is, it's not that your offense isn't holding the ball more. If Carolina had held the ball longer in this one, they wouldn't have won the game. They would have just scored fewer points. You gain your defense earns rest by getting itself off the field. The reason the defense faced a bunch of plays is because they didn't get off the field. They didn't get stops. When you don't get stops, you stay on the field. It's real simple.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy, if you can't tell. And
I have one caveat to that I'd like to talk about.
Can I take a break and then come back after
Sure.
the break, and let's keep rolling. Folks, I saw somebody in the chat say something I didn't like. And I'm going to talk about Johnny T-shirt, and you're going to wear that Johnny T-shirt gear when you buy it. It is important to Johnny T-shirt. It is important to Inside Carolina.
This hat is Johnny T-shirt, by the way.
That's a pretty sweet one. State of North Carolina flag right there
hat
on there. It is imperative that you shop at Johnny T-shirt to get your North Carolina gear. They're supporters of the podcast, supporters of Inside Carolina, and supporters of Inside Carolina premium subscribers. Whether it's a good day or bad day, it's always a great day to go to Johnny T-shirt and buy whatever you need North Carolina related. If it's not a football related item, they've got you covered on every other sport out there. Basketball season, somebody pointed out, basketball starts next Monday. If you don't have any gear for that, get it ready. It's Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. You get 10% off your order if you're that premium subscriber. And I'm going to tell you something. Jason's going to have some film breakdowns that are probably going to make you sick. But you get them if you're on Inside Carolina premium subscriber, and it'll be worth watching to see the why and the how.
It's just a question of which one, because it could be 30.
I want to see them all. And Johnny T-shirt gives you that 10% off, and you get to watch Jason's stuff. National Guys Who Pay the Bills will come back the day after. Whew, okay, fellas, we're back. Buck, you had a point, and I jumped in and stopped you. I want to get it on.
Okay.
I want to get you back on that, and I do want to make one correction. Georgia Tech scored 34 on Louisville to start the season. They have not scored over 30. They didn't play Vandy this year. You're talking about Vandy. I don't know if I fell asleep.
Was it it was Louisville, yeah.
Yeah, they lost Louisville 39-34. Other than that, they have not scored 30 points or more. Buck, get in here with your comment. Shout out to the 500 folks in here as well.
The point I was going to follow up with Jason on is I thought Georgia Tech had got the ability to run a few more plays than they should have, particularly at the end of the first half. When North Carolina was driving down to go up 28-21, they left 45 seconds on the clock that they had no business leaving. They could have snapped the ball another 10 seconds, let another 10 seconds run before they snapped the ball. And they had multiple opportunities to burn some clock on that drive, and they didn't. I know that it's imperative to them to get in the end zone, and they want to do it as quickly as they can. But at the same time, they left 45 seconds to a Georgia Tech team that was running up and down the field, throwing the ball, and you had to figure that they were going to get, enough yards in 45 seconds to kick a field goal, the way they were moving the ball.
100% agree there. And that's one of those cases where you have to clock manage properly in that case. Absolutely. And they
got to have some situational awareness, Yeah.
Yeah. They snapped the ball with 28 seconds left on the clock, if I remember right, on one of those plays where there's 44 seconds left or whatever. And it's one of those like, no, look, you make sure that you're the last team to score. This is in the analogous situation is you want to play with as fast a tempo against Virginia in basketball as you can. But if you get to the end of half and the shot clock is off, you want to get the last shot. That changes the math when you get into that situation. You get the last shot there. You try to 2-for-1 it if you can, just before that happens. That's where some of that clock stuff comes into play, where you can reduce you can reduce the number of possessions that your opponent gets. So 100% agree there. But beyond that, I mean, my goodness,
I get your point too. But I'm just saying there's a time and a place to slow it down if you need to.
100% agree.
But the problem though is when they've slowed it down, they haven't been effective. Jason, I mean, their 4-minute offense has not been good.
But I think in that situation, pre-half, just before the half, your first priority is to score a touchdown, but you should be able to score a touchdown there, the way they were running it, the way they were doing their stuff, without snapping it with 28 seconds left on the clock. You can bleed another 10, 12, 14 seconds off, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. Snap count article dropped on Inside Carolina. Shout out to Ben for getting that up while we're still here. Defensive line, and this is where I thought North Carolina was dominated. Kamen Rucker, 78. Desmond Evans, 50. Murphy, 45. Tamari Fox, 42. Hester, 28. 27 for Ritzy. 26 for Bo Atkinson. I think that's probably his season high. Gainer, 13. Travis Shaw, 10. Of course, Eccles and Gray both with 81. At linebacker, Elijah Huzzy with 81.
And of all those guys, the guy that played looking the least tired down the stretch was Kamen Rucker. He's the guy with the most plays.
Yeah.
Those defensive tackles, you're looking at Murphy, Fox, Hester, Ritzy, that group, they all look like they played 60 snaps, 70 snaps in the early fourth quarter.
And that's when Georgia Tech, in the fourth quarter alone, Georgia Tech rushed for 246, ran 22 rushes for 11.2 yards a carry. Buck, I guess North Carolina's now 6-2.
Travis Shaw, your 5-star with 10 snaps at this stage of his career, that speaks volumes in a game where you can't stop the run. That just says a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little bit mind-boggling. But where to now, elder statesman? I mean, I'm there with you. I've been here before, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
We've been here before.
And we're not the only ones. Mack Brown has been there before. 2013. Manny Diaz, second game of the season, gave up 550 yards rushing to BYU, who is not known for necessarily for their running expertise. And Manny's doing a great job at Penn State right now. But They gave up. I think the total was 679 to BYU. They gave up 630 something to Georgia Tech yesterday. So you think that 50 yards or so gives Gene Chizik a cushion? He didn't surpass Manny. I mean, it just boggles the mind that you can give up 630 some yards to Georgia Tech. I think they had like 200 yards against Miami, and that's the crazy part. When we were talking about playoffs and all of that kind of stuff 2 games ago, they were just coming off a really good win over a decent Miami team. They're a good team, I think. They have issues like everybody else, but that's a decent team.
And they very nearly lost to Virginia yesterday.
They very nearly lost Virginia. Virginia's apparently woken up since they played us. They got the boost of playing North Carolina's defense. So where do you go? I don't know. But I will say that if it's the defense that's the problem, and I think yet the last night was the clearest indication that what ails the North Carolina football program is the defense. Now, last year, when North Carolina went into its slump, Georgia Tech beat them 21-17 in a rock fight where neither team could do anything on offense. This year, completely different, and a lot of people would argue last year. I wasn't one that made this argument that the defense really came on and really played a lot better down the stretch. But that's not the case this year. The offense is still playing well. The offense is still playing well. They're 42 points should be enough to win a Power 5 football game. All other things considered. So if you can't win a football game scoring 42 points, you yourself had over 500 yards of total offense. What are we doing? You got to get somebody in the way of the other offense, and our defense is not doing it. And we talk about accountability all the time. The coaching staff talks about accountability all the time. You got to ask, where's the accountability?
Yep. Jason, get you in here. Almost 500 people in the chat. I think folks want to be in here for the rest of this discussion. It's going to be interesting. When I'm looking at the stats, talking about back to the offense just for 1 second. Run the damn football. North Carolina 267. Drake May 310. North Carolina 577 overall. Third downs for North Carolina's offense 9 for 15. Average yards completion 18.2. Gave up too many sacks. Gave up too many penalties. I think they lost 51 yards on penalties, and we've talked about a couple of them that were either phantom and bad. Turnover margin even.
Yeah, but the turnover margin was even, but there was the block punt.
Yeah, the block punt.
You remember in the WCHL segment that we talked, I'd said the way I always calculate this is that it's special teams explosives or special teams whiskey tango foxtrots, and turnovers that have to be considered together. And I felt like Georgia Tech needed to be at least +1 in that to win. Most likely, they went +1.
Yeah,
with the blocked punt. And here's the thing: that's the third block punt this season from the same punt formation, all of which trace to something with the shield there on that punt formation.
Something about what they say about insanity.
Yeah. So that was a serious mistake. I'll probably need to break that one down, but yeah, that was bad. But yeah, you're gonna say more.
Well, no, I want to get in here. I'm gonna do the congruity read because we're gonna wrap this one up a little bit early and let folks get out on their Sunday Congruity is the other sponsor of this podcast. They're great for small and mid-sized businesses. They're North Carolina based. You got great customer service. You can be upset at football and all, but when the real life comes around on Monday mornings, you got to handle your business on your business or your small business, or if you work for a small business. And Congruity empowers those small and mid-sized businesses with HR, payroll outsourcing. It enables you as a business owner to grow your business while they take care of those people, and people are the most important folks of the day. I mean, if you don't have good people around you, you're probably going to lose some things you shouldn't lose. You lose football games, you lose business. Congruity takes care of all that, and they do it with top-of-the-line technology. They grow your business on state-of-the-art online platform, and they're obsessed with customer service, as they should be and as they are. And they transform your organization. Go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels to get your free assessment. See what they can do for you inside Carolina, and of this podcast and of this video. You get a free assessment, and we all like free stuff. Congruity hooks you up with a free assessment. congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Jason, we are winding down. It's 41-41 as I look. So we've been doing this for 41 minutes. And we've talked a lot about the defense, some about the offense, some about special teams now. What's left? As Buck always says, what's left on this bone to pick at?
Well, I can get us to 46.
All right. I will disregard the hourglass for you to go. Knock it out.
The thing that was the cherry on top for me in this game, and folks who follow me on Twitter know I went off on this on Twitter, or I guess X, whatever it is now.
You still have to type Twitter to get to X. It makes no sense. But the point.
I am thoroughly baffled on how, with 2 minutes and 50 seconds or whatever it was at the beginning of that final drive, how you send out a nickel personnel defense. Not only every person in the stadium, but every person watching that game on television, every person listening to that game on the radio knew that Georgia Tech was going to run the football there. Right? All they needed to do is get a first down, and they're in position to win the game. You get 2 first downs and you definitely win it. And to that point in the fourth quarter, they were averaging 12 yards a rush. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, for those of you, college football or Madden, fans, those of you who've played that, this is the moment in that kind of situation where you call punt block. Y'all know that, right?
Absolutely.
Back at the old school punt block where, you just decide you're gonna bring pressure from everywhere, and if they can get the pass off, then they're gonna score. But everybody had the experience in that game where you just call punt block and you're just saying, okay, well, one of us is gonna make a big play here. They ran out the same personnel that had just been given up 12 yards a carry, and played it for coverage.
There for a minute, I thought Jason had run out of words. I was going to fall over in my chair.
No, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here, right? I mean, when I was watching this, it's like, what is going on? Why are they doing this? Because this is where you have to have a plan for end of game scenario here. When a team is almost certainly going to go run heavy, you have to have a plan prepared. This is something you work on in camp. Okay, here's our package where we're going to make it so that they're going to have to throw it to beat us. And to me, you take off, maybe you take out one of those if you really feel like, okay, well, we can't take off one of our corners because they're in 3 wide, fine, then take out one of your safeties. Okay? Take out one of your safeties, have one of your corners now lined up as technically a safety by position, and just put him there in press and let him play man and zero that. Leave your best run fit safety on the field, and then go five-man defensive line. Bring Amari Gaynor on the field, say, at one of the edges, or maybe go with a third defensive tackle, although, it seems to me that the more defensive tackles you get out there for North Carolina, the more likely you are to get pushed around right now. But, go bare. Cover up the center and both guards. Say you are not running the ball between the tackles. Have your 2 outside backers lined up outside. Bring that extra safety in the box and say, look, if you're going to go 3 wide, that's fine. You know what? We're going to single cover you. You're going to have to actually beat our corners. And yes, you've beaten our corners so far today. But the one thing you ain't doing is running the football so that you can run the clock and just have no problems. No, get your stop. If it's an incomplete pass, now under 2 minutes at least, the clock's going to stop and you got a chance. I was absolutely, I was at a loss watching that. I don't understand that. And when I saw that, it was like, this is something that, you've got to make changes at that point. You can't play that way. You can't have, and by the way, the last couple runs where they did get those first downs, so they got 3rd and 3, twice, the 3rd and 2 twice in that situation. Go back and look, and it's a safety not filling.
For the record, to put on the record, Georgia Tech takes over at 2:54 after Tez got hit and fumbled. Smith up the middle, 3, timeout Carolina. Keeper King left, 6, timeout Carolina. Smith up the middle, 3. Smith up the middle, 4, timeout Carolina. Keeper King up the middle, 3, timeout Georgia Tech. On 3rd and 3, ball game at hand. Smith up the middle, 6, and he slid down, if my memory serves.
He did. He could have scored on that play.
Ball game. Meanwhile, North Carolina's still in the nickel package.
In nickel.
You know what it reminded me of, Buck? Do you remember at Miami? I think it was during the Fedora era, and we talked about this a lot. And Jason, I remember talking about this with you.
Yeah.
Miami's got like 1st and goal at the 1, and Carolina was in dime.
They were in dime. And remember, Miami had a jumbo package on the field.
Yeah.
So you had 180-pound corners.
We know how to talk about bad defense. It's not our first rodeo.
Yeah,
I think something's got to change. Something has got to change.
Yeah.
It is, or it's going to be an ugly.
The labels for this show, same old soft Tar Heels, and you can take North Carolina out of the you can take North Carolina out of the Coastal, but you can't take the Coastal out of North Carolina.
But close us out. We're gonna get out of here before the hour.
This is really a question more so than a comment. Having watched the defense this year and all the time, it seems to me like the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. There is more talent on the team, and they show that they have physical ability. And I'll give you an example. Don Chapman's interception. He showed tremendous reflexes and instincts to catch that ball in the first place. And then showed the body control of a gymnast to get a toe in bounds to make sure that the interception stuck. That was a heck of a play. Heck of a physical, great play. And we see that a lot. I still don't think we talk about this player enough, but Marcus Allen is a heck of a ball player. Long, he's got speed, he's a good tackler. He missed an angle on a play or two, but he's got all the physical talent and the ability you want in a corner. He's a natural corner. And then there's other guys, Ced Gray, Power Eccles. There that and there's some defensive linemen that flash. Des Evans made a great play during this game. That you can see the physical ability and the talent in the players that come out during a game, but when you get them together as 11 on the field, they just don't look coordinated. Is the word I'm looking for. And so that's more of a question, really, I think, than an observation. But I think I'd kind of leave it there. And then we're going to be talking about, has Mack Brown lost the fan base? I saw that question pop up a couple of times in the comments. Hunter Pierce brought it up as one of the guys that wanted to talk about it. But are we there yet? Maybe we are. I don't know. But those are some big questions that I think that one way or the other is going to get addressed, whether it's Mack Brown that does it or not.
I think we're there on the fan base. I mean, a lot of people discount message boards. A lot of people discount social media, internet, and all that stuff. It is, it's just kind of like, it's not like that in the real world. These are the diehards. These are the people that pour the money in, the people that are there, the people that are paying attention all the time, and you can see it. I think it's a microcosm of the hardcore fan base, and when the hardcore fan base goes south.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature to talk about Mack having lost the fan base because, you go and you beat Clemson, you beat NC State, you finish the year, that way. And, there's pretty good opportunities for recovery. But I think it's going to take that to regain anything, because these two losses were significant. They were significant. They did significant damage to the overall fan base and the general ethos and feeling about the program as a whole. I mean, I was getting texts and things like, last time I trust North, every year I start trusting them a little bit, and then the last time I trust them, that sort of thing. And it's hard to win football games, right? I mean, let's not forget they were struggling to win 3 games before Matt got here, but you're hoping that you can take that next step this season with a generational quarterback. And fact of the matter is, first month, we talked about this. First 5-6 games, you played against teams that didn't really have good offenses. And so the defense looked better, just like they did down the stretch last year. Played against a lot of teams that were not as good on offense. And now, in a couple games, still playing against teams that are not great on offense, but they were better, had some playmakers, and all of a sudden the wheels come off. And, that's not good. They're going to have to figure some things out in order to beat those teams down the stretch. They still can, but, you go out and you lose both or even one of those last two games and finish with, 3 or 4 losses on the season after that start. And yeah, a lot of people have lost a lot of trust in the direction of the program, especially when you kind of expect a generational quarterback to kind of be a high watermark for your program, knowing that next year, obviously no announcements have been made or whatever, but next year you expect to play without a generational type quarterback. I mean, you go from Sam Howell and Drake May to whoever it's going to be next year, and you're going to expect a significant drop off at that position. And, where's the program going to be without that security blanket?
Yeah, I'll let it be there. But great comments to close us, Jason. Great comments to close. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity for sponsoring us. We'll be back. Here's a little update on what we're doing this week. No On the Beat on Tuesday night. It is Halloween night. Spend time with your families and all that stuff. We will sort of combine On the Beat and the game plan ahead of Campbell on Thursday night. There'll be a couple. Taylor and Jeff Chapman will drop their show, and a couple basketball shows coast to coast, and then a special basketball podcast that'll be out. Jason and I will talk on Thursday again, and then we'll be IC Live in the Bowls lot. Come out and join us at 9 a.m. in the Bowls lot. And if it's going according to plan, it'll be 25 degrees, and the breakfast will be frozen, but we certainly be out there with Joey Powell and myself. Anything left, gentlemen?
One thing I would like to say, because you got to give shout outs where they're due. I thought Doc Chapman was a real shot in the arm for the offense, and his speed is a great asset to have at that position. Running the punt back and that 35-yard touchdown catch. He needs a shout out, I think, for a young player that people may be sleeping on a bit.
No, I agree with you. I mean, one thing that you can't do is you can't let the terrible get in the way of the good. And Doc Chapman was certainly good, and a lot of guys play good. A lot of good plays out there. Tez Walker update, of course, in South Carolina will keep you up as much as possible. Sean Crowley, I just dropped the schedule change, no on the beat, everything else according to plan. And North Carolina football plays again Saturday against Campbell. The Camels come to town in a feel-good game. Not sure how much will be gained from it, but we shall find out. That's Buck Sanders. That's Jason Staples. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. It's been the day after North Carolina, a telling defeat down in Atlanta. Thanks, everybody.
Atlanta, man.